Welcome to the Artificially Authentic podcast with Nick Latour and Raul Rodriguez. Raul, last week our episode on GEO went over really well. People
Yeah, it
loved it.
seems like people love it. Like it's a pretty new concept, and like we said, it's the future, right? The future and the present.
Yeah, practical, but we kind of did an overview of what it is and why it's important. But I think it was a great idea you had. Let's dig deeper. So let's call this one GEO Part 2. Sound good?
Yep,
Let's do that.
let's do
Um,
it. So I've had some time to dig even further, and now I think everybody of our listeners are also ready, especially if you did your own little research. Now we can go and look at some expert tips, things I've heard from some of the industry experts. We have access to those, so let's talk about it. One first, before we get to a tip, it's a very curious thing, just so that you understand how AI uses like Google search. So what some experts discovered was that when an LLM, like let's say ChatGPT, uses a Google search, they write a huge query. It's not like our query where it's like, give me the latest baseball playoff results. No, they write like tons and tons of lines of a Google search. So sometimes like just saying, hey, if I appear high on Google, does that mean I'm going to appear high on an LM? Absolutely not. It's a very, very, very different query, very different algorithm for everything. And that's where the concept of geo is very different than SEO. Does that make sense, Nick?
Total sense. Total sense. It's taking a more, I guess, holistic is the word, or like organic
Yeah.
approach and finding all the data it can instead of kind of ranking it toward the top. Yep.
Yeah, it can't just use Google. But speaking of which, as we know, Google has their own LLM, right? Gemini, which you and I sometimes use. Not my favorite, but they have their strengths. And one thing to always keep in mind in the AI world is that the things that are strong now can not be the case in a few months. So everything's always changing. But Google has invested a lot in their LLM called Gemini, and everybody has probably already seen it. Whenever they do a Google search, you'll see the AI results first. But obviously, the search results from Google will probably be worth more inside Gemini. So the main thing to learn from this is that LLMs have different bias toward different sources.
Mm.
So that's something very important to keep. So when we're talking about Google, right? They will obviously value their search, and YouTube, for example, more YouTube is part of Google, so they'll value it more. Or for example, Gronk, like they have access to Twitter. They value it's owned by Twitter, right? Like so they will value it way higher when ChatGPT, for example, doesn't have access to Twitter. One of the times I was asking ChatGPT what they think about a comedian and some of their recent Twitter posts, and it actually didn't access Twitter. It kept telling me, it's like, well, I saw on over the web this article that mentioned this comedian's post. And I was like, wait, why are you not checking Twitter? He's like, I don't have access to it. So every LLM will vary it. So Geo could vary by LLM.
That's crazy. That's something I hadn't thought about before because in my mind, any of these LLMs are just scouring everything they have access to, but restricting access kind of behooves a Grok, I guess, or in this case, like Gemini has all the Google stuff. Wow, that's crazy. I hadn't thought of that.
And that could affect a lot like your strategy, right? Like, because you might say, "Oh, hey, I want to focus on ChatGPT," and that's valid. But maybe all the if you're a smaller or medium-sized distributor or supplier, you the bigger ones might go after ChatGPT, right? But maybe Gemini is not a bad idea since it's also used by Google search, right? So there's several strategies that you can use. And speaking of valuing, we're also learning that Reddit has been a big thing for Google search. Google search has actually also devalued it a little bit recently, and only showing showing now less results. But apparently, LLMs are also valuing Reddit a little bit less, which is interesting.
That is interesting. I feel like people use Reddit a lot for like just for this kind of thing. I mean, I realize it's kind of opinion pieces, so maybe. Why do you think that is? Why would they not value it as high?
Maybe it's not super trustworthy for different things. Like I guess it depends on the topic. Like I use Reddit a lot for coding bugs or gaming. So as you know, I like to play video games. I'm not a hardcore. Call of Duty all night long, but I like my RPGs. And whenever I find I've been playing Cyberpunk a lot lately, which has been out for a while, but it's just an amazing game. It has a lot of bugs still, and sometimes I get stuck in a bug. It's usually Reddit where I found it.
Interesting. All right, so a key takeaway here then, and maybe you can kind of summarize too, is when you're trying to optimize your company's GEO, just know that Google isn't the only play. Or, you kind of have to diversify.
ChatGPT is not the same. It's different than Gemini, which is different than Claude. So you have to check a little bit of all of them. They do have a lot of stuff in common, which is the next part. So what are the things that they generally all value a lot? So this was an interesting thing I heard, but it doesn't apply to a lot of you guys. Have a Wikipedia page. Nick, do you have a Wikipedia page on your name or no? You're that famous?
Uh, I do not, unless my daughter made one up for me, and it's just
Oh, that would be a good
basically
one.
trolling me. Yeah, yeah.
So if a company is able to have a Wikipedia page, they actually do value Wikipedia a lot. And you can say, like, well, why Wikipedia not Reddit? I don't know. I'm not a open AI coder, but it's an interesting one. And then, like we said before, like I got confirmation again, like you have to write a lot of content. So, like I was saying before, FAQs and use cases, things like that. But a key thing is writing a lot in the voice to your customers. So things that, and think about it, right? Like if you're an LLM and you want to show to a potential buyer, they're going to use that content the most. So always as if you were talking to a customer. So again, blog posts, FAQs, comparison, use cases, that is valued by everybody.
Yeah. Last episode, you were talking about the content that you put on your website, for example, and putting quotes from high-ranking officials at the company, maybe like a VP or a C-suite person, and but then within that, the tone maybe is that what you're talking about? The tone of the website and the
Yeah, the
copy.
tone is as if you were talking to prospects or end customers. Anything
Mm.
that's content gears towards them and in the tone and in the actual content is best. And the last tip I have, this is a very interesting one. Some experts found that the age of the content matters a lot. So what some of them hacked was that they kept changing the publication date of the content. So they kept republishing it, like the blog post, and updating the date. And so they kept getting up higher because of that. Now they had a huge disclaimer. It's like this is so stupid that we think they'll figure this out and this will get fixed quickly. But the key takeaway was that it's not good enough to just like, hey, I created 50 pages. Okay, but a year from now, those are going to be considered old. So blog posts, new use cases, everything, all that matters a lot. Just always have to keep working on it.
Stay current, the more current, and that makes sense really when you think about it, because the most frustrating thing, if I were googling things, which I don't even do anymore, I don't think, is like, tell me about this specific topic, and it's like, yeah, here you go, and it's from 2015, and you're like, well, this doesn't do me much good anymore. So I'm glad to know that little piece too.
Well, Nick, those are all the advanced tips I've had. If people want some, we'll come up with more. And please, guys, if you have questions, leave them in the comments. Send us an email. Most of you guys, we've worked with you. Ask us anything over email, or if you see us at a show. PPI Expo's going to be there in 3 more weeks. So 3 more months. Sorry, 3 more months. So if please come by, stop our booth, and ask us anything you want about AI.
We're there for it, by the way. Before we end, no results for my name, by the way.
Okay.
Um, so
Well, you misspelled your own last name.
no. They asked if I meant that, but
Oh,
I spelt it correctly. I guess I didn't capitalize it, but all right. Thanks,
well, we'll have
everybody.
to fix that.
Yeah,
Bye.
yeah. We'll see you next time. Bye.